Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to reintroduce to you now. John LaSpina is a returning guest on our show. Be sure to check out his recent appearances on episode 575 and 582 of Boundless Body Radio. John LaSpina is a 58-year-old retired middle school teacher of 34 years. John taught language arts, social studies, civics, and video production. John is a perpetual student, and most of his education comes from experts in the field of low carbohydrate nutrition. He became fat adapted about 4 years ago when he started eating a ketogenic diet. Currently, he identifies as a carnivore and claims to have never felt more alive or more healthy. His YouTube videos serve the purpose of informing and educating viewers about the proper way of eating real, whole foods and the potential benefits that can be experienced through this approach. John encourages viewers to leave comments and questions, assuring them that he will respond to everyone. John creates these YouTube videos for free, offering them to anyone who wants to learn, as he believes knowledge is power. His ultimate goal is to help individuals become the optimized versions of themselves by learning to eat well in order to feel and look well. You can find John on YouTube at Carnivore Teacher. John LaSpina, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you back to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you, Casey. It's an honor to be back. The last 2 times were phenomenal.
So much fun. I love hosting you. I love having chats with you. They are very natural. They go by very, very quickly. We both get very excited about the topics that we talk about. The idea that you had for this episode, I thought was fantastic. I've done bits and pieces of this in the past, but to make a practical guide for people that want to try a carnivore diet, to tell them and share with our audience ways that we're cooking our food, ways we're preparing our food, the kinds of foods that we buy, the equipment that we might be using in the kitchen, how we order things at restaurants. I think this will be very helpful for people, and I think people are going to get a lot out of this.
I agree. I do too.
That's going to be great. Before we get there, I've got a few matters of business to cover with you. What happened to your YouTube channel? If somebody were to go back and click the original links, which I've all updated, they go kind of nowhere.
Okay. I started that YouTube channel over 5 years ago. I originally had songs that I made so my mother could play them because I like to sing and play instruments, right? And then when I went keto, I decided, I was a video production teacher, I'm going to make videos teaching people what has improved my life. Maybe it'll help them too. So 5 years I invested into this thing, and I had over 450 videos. I got up to over 3,000 subscribers, which is really kind of cool, and thousands of watch hours. And I had 2 Gmail accounts. One is my personal one, and one is teachercarnivore@gmail.com. So people, I can talk to them on the business level of that. And with each Gmail account comes is a possibility to have a YouTube channel. So I had 2 YouTube channels. And I was accidentally posting to one instead of the other because of my 2 accounts. So at some point, I wanted to delete the one. You can still delete a YouTube channel and keep that Gmail because it's all Google. It's a Google company. And I did it not realizing that the one that I had all my videos on was linked to the master account and not the second account. I didn't know. And I thought I was just deleting the empty one, and everything gone permanently. I had to go through, Casey, it was like a death in the family. I went through anger, disbelief, rage, depression. I had to go through all the stages of loss. And then I'm like, what else can I do? I'm going to rebuild from the bottom up. I have a hard drive. I have almost all my videos saved on the hard drive, but loading them up and tagging them and writing descriptions and putting, it takes a lot of time. So I'm in the process of reloading one a day and making new ones. And I'm up to about 40 videos now. And I have 360 subscribers. So spread the word. Please rejoin me. If you know who I am and you've used to follow me, I'm still there. It's the same name. I added 1965 after it because that was my birth year. Or just type in Carnivore Teacher, you'll find me, click the subscribe button, and I'm still doing it. Actually, I'm using this opportunity to refine it and to make it, I'm learning all the little ins and outs of how YouTube works a lot better. And so I'm doing better things with it now.
Yeah,
so that's my my YouTube deal. I'm
Oh,
okay with it. A couple of weeks have gone by. I've gotten past it.
you've gotten past it, all the tears, the
Oh
wailing, the
gosh.
gnashing of teeth. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I would be floored if that happened. I've had that happen to me before where I thought I was posting to our business account when I was actually
Right.
posting to my personal account. So I certainly understand that. I've gone through and updated all the links from all the episodes that you and I have ever done. So if you
Thank
click on
you.
the link, it'll go to the right place. I highly encourage the listener to go and subscribe because your videos are very helpful. I'm glad that at the very least you're getting some joy out of, going through your content again, some of the stuff you probably haven't looked at in a few years and
Yeah.
trying to refine. Every now and again, I don't do this that often, but every now and again, I use a random number generator to generate a number between one and whatever number of episodes we're up to in our show. And sometimes I'll go back and listen to a show that I did maybe like 3 years ago that I had like completely forgotten about. And it does help you to remember like how to ask better questions, how to refine the process, or how to cut to the chase a little bit better. So hope you're at least enjoying the refining process. But
I
that would
am.
be pretty depressing at first. So much work.
That's how if you study my life, anybody who knows me, I make the big mistakes. I make big mistakes. I could tell you stories of car accidents and some
Oh my
really
goodness.
bad things in my life. I don't just make little things and learn. I do it big.
Well, yeah, I mean, just taking in our first episode where you went through your personal story of how you went through the diet and like,
Uh,
yeah, you were doing the diet all wrong with lots of
the
counting
oxalate,
calories and
yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
thing, and then went on to a very high oxalate version of the ketogenic diet, which didn't go that well for you. So we're really appreciative of you going through all these lessons and teaching them to us. We appreciate we appreciate that a lot. Second order of business. I was just curious about something. You appeared on one of our mutual friends, Maggie Stewart's podcast, Off of the
Mhm.
Couch podcast. She is awesome. I love her work. She's interviewed you recently. I can't remember if you and I talked about this, but you mentioned something on her show that I was very, very curious about, which was your episode with AFib and how that kind of went away when you started to transition over to the carnivore diet. So I'm curious if you could not only share that story, but maybe share with us some of the things you've learned about that, and maybe we can make some educated guesses on why that would have changed or what would have improved just by changing
Okay.
the diet.
Okay. Before I start, listeners, I'm not a doctor, and what I'm about to share is not medical advice. It's my experience and my knowledge that I learned and some opinions. So I started keto 5 years ago. About 9 years ago, I had a sinus infection. I used to get sore throats and sinus infections a few a year. And by the way, they all stopped when I went keto carnivore. I haven't had one since, not one. It's
Amazing.
just amazing. But I used to get them a lot. And in one of my sinus infections, I came home from work, from school, and I remember we had just bought this house. And I remember just that awful, horrible pressure. And I'm going to take myself to urgent care. I don't know if I need an antibiotic. I just felt awful, terrible. So I went there, and they checked my pulse, and they said, your pulse is at 180. I said, 180? Then they checked it again. I was back down to 75, then back up to 160, then down to 65. And they said, you're in atrial fibrillation. And I kind of heard about it, but I didn't know what that was. I go, what is that all about? So they took my shirt off and they put the heart monitors all over the chest, and they verified with the monitor I was in AFib. Atrial fibrillation, our heart, this is my understanding of it. You have the atrium, and what's the other one called? The bottom part of the heart. There's another part of the heart. So it pumps the heart, and the blood goes from chamber to chamber. And when you're in atrial fibrillation, the blood kind of collects in the atrium, and the heart is pumping like crazy. It's getting like the wrong signals, and it's pumping too much, and then it stops. And all that blood collects. And when blood collects and starts pumping through the body, it can tend to coagulate. It can cause a stroke. So being an AFib is very, very dangerous. It is very dangerous. You have a higher possibility of having problems like a stroke. So they suggested at the urgent care, you need to go to the emergency room right now. So I drove home with my sinus infection, miserable, and I mulled it over. I Googled atrial fibrillation, and I'm like, ah. So I drove myself to the emergency room,
Wow.
and they hooked me up, and they confirmed I was in AFib. They gave me medicine to knock me back down into sinus rhythm. I don't know what that was. It was a little shot in my stomach. And then they wanted to keep me overnight to observe me. So they checked me into a hospital room. And I didn't come back into AFib again. And then they, referred me to a cardiologist. And that's when I started going to see a cardiologist. The cardiologist, they hooked me up and confirmed I was in AFib because I went back into it. And they prescribed flecainide and metoprolol. One makes my heart not beat so fast, and one keeps it stable. I forget how it went. And the paragraph of side effects, Casey, scared the living crap out of me.
Wow.
I thought, well, I better take this and we'll see how it goes. And I didn't get most of the side effects, but I got some of them and I didn't like it. But I never went into AFib when I was taking that medicine. So it worked. I would go back to the cardiologist every 6 months. And we just stayed on it. He wanted me to have this operation called an ablation, where they go in through your groin, they come up through the artery in your heart, and they poke through the top part of the atrium, and they go in and they actually scar a section inside the heart that's causing the heart to misfire. And I said, and I looked that up. I Googled that because I'm a big consumer of knowledge. I don't want to just take somebody's advice. I want to find out on my own. I want to do my own research. I Googled ablation. I went on to AFib sites on Facebook and talked to people that have it and had the operation. Everybody I talked to said, don't do it.
Wow.
That like 90% of the people, they have to have another ablation and another ablation and another ablation. And I went back to the cardiologist and I said, I'd rather stay on the medicine for now. I don't want to do this kind of drastic surgery. It kind of scared me. So I stayed on it, and I was on it for a while, right? And then I started keto carnivore. And I learned that the metoprolol, which is a beta blocker, it's like a high blood pressure medicine, one of the medicines for AFib, raises your blood glucose. Anybody who's on a blood pressure medicine, your blood glucose is going higher. I had a blood ketone meter from Keto Mojo. I was testing it, and my blood glucose was always over 100, even fasted. And you're supposed to be 100 or less. Like right now, my fasted blood glucose is around 75 or 80, not eating anything. So I thought, well, I'm doing keto. I don't want to work against myself and take this drug, and what am I going to do? So I contacted my cardiologist, and he, of course, didn't want to hear about it, didn't believe in keto, told me I should stay on the medicine and I should get the operation. So I just like, I'm not going to talk to this guy. So I, of course, did a lot more research, and I decided, and I don't recommend this for everybody because I'm not a doctor, don't take this as advice, but this is what I chose to do for self. And that was to wean off of the 2 drugs. And very, very, very slowly, over 2 months, I cut the pills into ever smaller portions. And then I started taking them less frequently in the day until I was off of them completely. And I did this myself. And I thought if anything went wrong, I'll go back on them. I'll go to the doctor. And I did. And I did not go into AFib. And then I was off of the atrial fibrillation medicine for a while. No AFib. I'm not going into AFib. Is it this way of eating? Is it the diet? And now what I have is 99% of the time I am in sinus, and I'm in sinus rhythm. Okay, that means that I actually have a app on my phone. I can tap it, an app on my watch. I can tap it and hold my finger here, and it counts down from 30 to 0. I won't do it now, but it'll tell me what my heartbeat is and if I'm in sinus rhythm. Apple Watch, really kind of cool. It does that. And I used that a lot at the beginning. And I was in sinus rhythm 99% of the time, but 1% of the time I would go into AFib. I'm like, shit, what's going on here? And it can happen because apparently my heart still has the condition, but I believe that eating properly over 5 years now possibly has healed whatever was causing my AFib in the chamber of my heart. I was talking to Dr. Sean Baker on his interview, and I brought this up. We talked with him a little bit, and that's from his perspective of being a doctor. He thought that maybe, he was inferring that's what happens because he's seen a lot of people with different ailments healing. And so I don't go into AFib anymore. I think the last time I popped into it was a few months ago, and it was for like 5 minutes and it went back to normal. Pretty weird. So trying to think of what else I can share for anybody who gets information. Everybody's different. My brother-in-law was just recently diagnosed with AFib. Of course, I'm filling his brain with what to do, but he's not going to listen to me. He's listening to his cardiologist. Everybody has a different experience with, and nobody knows what causes it. That's the thing. I do know that obese people tend to go have a problem with AFib more than lean, healthy people. So when I lost the 35 pounds and started eating properly, maybe that's another reason my AFib got better. But that's what I have. I hope somebody can hear that story and maybe learn something about themselves. I don't know, but that's me.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I've got a client who is very scientific. She was really curious about this and wanted to ask you about it and was asking like, well, what are the mechanisms? How exactly does this work? Where are the studies that show that this can be, changed or you could, put it into remission if you want to say that, or just get rid of it. I said, I mean, if you're going to wait for studies to be done about this, you're going to be waiting a long time. Like nobody's studying carnivores, people who are exclusively eating meat.
That's the problem. Yeah.
Right. Anybody who shows a group of people that they look at is only generally epidemiological anyway. You're just looking at a group and making observations. And meat eaters are not like you and I meat eaters where we're only eating meat. It's that we're eating meat that comes in the form of pepperoni on a pizza with the crust and the sauce and the burger with the bun and the fries and the soda. They never tell you that. And so it's going to be tough for us to exactly know how this is happening, why this is happening, or do a controlled study on people with this. It might take several years, like you said, but I will just say, speculating, it's something that I see a lot, and I think you see it a lot as well. The people that have randomly weird issues that are explainable or not explainable just tend to magically kind of slip away when you're eating this way. And I wondered if electrolyte balance would be better. Maybe it's the weight loss, maybe it's the blood sugar reduction, maybe it's the blood pressure, maybe they're all related to each other. But I appreciate you kind of explaining that and giving us your thoughts.
And you mentioned electrolytes. One of the things I read in my research is magnesium. Okay. Most humans are deficient in magnesium because the soil that the cows are eating, the grass, is depleted from over farming over many decades. And so we're not, in general, everybody is not getting enough magnesium, is what I'm hearing over and over again. So I take a magnesium supplement every day. I take one during the day, which is a magnesium citrate. And then I take one at night, which is a magnesium threonate. And the magnesium is supposed to be a wonderful electrolyte for your heart rhythm and for heart. Everybody can benefit from it. But if you have AFib, anybody listening, magnesium, you can do the research on your own. Google it. Magnesium is suggested to supplement with magnesium. I know we're supposed to say, oh, we get everything we need from a carnivore way of eating. Electrolytes we need to sometimes supplement.
Yep.
Good point.
Good point. Yeah. And to think that ship has probably sailed. Like we may not ever get back to the point that the soil is going to regenerate. We all need to be thinking about this because that's the reality of the situation. As much as I don't love to push supplements, there are things that we're probably going to need because we're dealing with a different context that even like 50 years ago, 100 years ago, things are changing as far as like the way we're raising food, and needs nutritionally will change as well. So thank you for adding that in. I appreciate those recommendations, and I agree with you. I think most people could probably benefit from taking a look at magnesium and deciding whether that's right for them. And it comes in so many different forms as well. It's good that you're interested in the different forms and using them for different purposes. So now, let's get into the reason why we decided to do this episode. Why did you want to come back and create a practical guide for people as far as this goes? Most people could just do their own Googling and figure things out, but tell us why we're doing this.
Well, the first question that everybody asks me if they start asking me about my way of eating is, what do you eat, John? What do you have? What do you have for breakfast? What do you have for lunch? What do you have for dinner? And I used to get frustrated with that question. And I understand now that is where they are. because they're used to what they eat. They want to know what I eat. What's different? What is different? So I explain to them I'll just take, a simple question. What do you have as breakfast? So I say, well, my break fast, which is whenever I start eating for the first time in the day, because a lot of people don't understand that concept. I choose not to have a morning meal because the longer my last meal was before my first meal of the next day, my body is going through autophagy. It's repairing. My pancreas is resting. My blood glucose is stable. So the longer we can take our intermittent fast, which we all do, we never call it that, but we do, the healthier. So I tell them I break my fast around 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. When my stomach tells me I'm hungry, when I get hunger signals. And I tell them I did a video on it. I think that's the one you watched. I have 4 or 5 eggs. I use my cast iron skillet. I take chopped up meat from last night's dinner. I always have a steak or something for dinner the night before with extra. So I take it on the cutting board and I chop up pieces and I reheat that and I add more butter or ghee in the pan and I just explain what my first meal is. And then they will respond and say, no toast? Well, what about a banana? Well, what about an English muffin? Well, how do you sop up the egg yolk? And they're thinking about the carbohydrates. So they understand that no, that's what I don't eat. I don't eat the carbohydrates and the sugars. I just eat the protein and the fat. And what's so amazing is because it has so much healthy fat and it's saturated mostly, a signal gets sent to my brain called a leptin. And it tells me I'm full and I really don't want anything. Sometimes until the next day if I want to. That's how powerful this is. But I do eat at 6 o'clock at night. I have a dinner. I do go by the clock. I don't have to, but I do. That's kind of how I start with people. And then they'll say, okay, well then what do you have for dinner? And then I'll explain some of my dinners. So in our interview here today, I typed some stuff here so I can refer back to it and not sound unarticulate or whatever. I can share with you some of the things I do. Let me know if you want me to go into that.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about breakfast at first. And I really want you to sell me on this, actually. I still do coffee in the morning. In my coffee, I normally do, let's see, what would I normally do? I normally do 3 cups of coffee in the morning. So it's kind of a 20-ounce, 24-ounce kind of mug. It's mostly full. I will blend it with, I do just less than a tablespoon of butter. I do MCT oil as well. And I've also learned that salt is really great in there. For me, it cuts the bitterness, and I really enjoy that. You went through the process of eliminating coffee. I feel like I'm kind of in a neutral place with it. Like I feel like I don't really need it. I feel alert and awake when I wake up pretty naturally at 5 a.m, pretty much every day. Anyway, I somewhat enjoy it, but sell me on the no coffee thing. Should I fully eliminate coffee?
I'll start with the coffee thing and then I'll go into the food. So I did coffee just like you, and I would have 2 cups in the morning, and then I would have one in the morning. To me meant 6, 7 o'clock in the morning because I'm an early riser. I get up at sunrise. I would do the 2 cups and then I was ready to get on my bike, right? Do my bike ride. And then around 12 o'clock noon, I would always have another cup just to get going. And I did an experiment. I said, I'm going to try to take myself off of coffee. I always ground my own beans. I did not use the Keurig. We have a Keurig machine, but don't use it. So I would buy all different kinds of really cool beans. So I took decaffeinated beans using the water method, and I took the regular beans, and I did like 3/4 to 1/4. And over the month, I slowly switched out caffeinated beans with decaffeinated beans. I grind it. Then I used a French press. Okay, that's how I made my coffee. I just found it so much better, so much more fresh when I did my coffee. I was a good barista, man. I was a coffee connoisseur. When I went out, I wanted a good cup of coffee. We're on vacation and they had the wonderful espresso machines, the big brass machine. I want the good stuff. Okay, I don't like cheap coffee. So I'm a snob. I was a coffee snob. So I knew how to grind my beans. I had a French press. I put a little filter in it, And I slowly ended up after 30 days just having decaffeinated coffee. Why did I do it that way? To avoid the headache. I don't know if, I think this is pretty much everybody. When we drink coffee, okay, there's this thing in the brain called adenosine. And if you listen to the end of the word, adenosine, caffeine, it has a similar suffix. Adenosine, and then we have these receptors in our brain called adenosine receptors. And this adenosine kind of keeps you awake, okay? When you drink coffee, the adenosine that's supposed to go into the adenosine receptors to keep you awake stay floating around, and the caffeine goes into the adenosine receptors instead. And that's where you get your boost of energy. All right. That's why caffeine is a stimulant. But as the caffeine wears off, this adenosine is still floating around and it's looking for a place to dock, and it has nowhere to dock. And then you go through this, oh, I need another cup of coffee. So it's almost like we talk about the carb and sugar roller coaster. There's almost like an adenosine caffeine roller coaster for people who drink coffee. And if you don't fill those receptors with caffeine and the adenosine, they make more receptors as you drink more. It's looking for a place to dock. And if you go past 24 hours, going on to 48 hours, you're going to get a headache. And that's because caffeine constricts the little blood vessels in your brain. And that's why people who drink caffeine also have a higher blood pressure, because when you constrict your veins and arteries, the blood has a little harder time going through. So when you stop drinking coffee, those constricted arteries start to dilate. They start to open up again. And as they're opening up, they're pressing on your brain and it hurts. That is the caffeine headache. And I would get horrible. I mean, like a drug addict, like I gotta get my coffee. Give me a caffeine pill. Give me something to get rid of this headache. And so I wanted to avoid that. So I slowly switched out the caffeinated beans with the decaffeinated beans. So my adenosine receptors, the vasoconstriction dilation, the whole thing, I did it over 30 days. I eased off of all of that. And I'm not going to say I didn't have a headache. I had a very mild headache from time to time. So that's how I got off of coffee. But then I missed the ritual in the morning, because the warm cup and the sipping and the waiting. And so I took hot water, I added a bunch of butter, and I just did the action, the motion. I replaced something with something else. And then eventually I just did a glass of water in the morning, which is what I do now. And I did this a year ago. So now I'm off of coffee. I've been off of coffee for a year, and no headaches. And a lot of people talk about the drinking coffee so I can go to the bathroom. All right, nobody talks about this. And I was one of those people. I drink my 2 cups of coffee and like clockwork, off to the bathroom, right? And I move my bowel. Number 2, move my bowels efficiently, just comes right out. And when you stop coffee, that stops happening. And I had to decide if I wanted to deal with that. And a lot of people, it's important to go to the bathroom at the same time every day. So when I quit, it didn't happen right away, but later in the day, I eventually moved my bowels. It just changed the timing is all it did. And, I sleep better. Even though my last cup was 12 noon and I don't go to bed till 11 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night, I sleep more soundly. It's less interrupted, and I just wake up refreshed. I jump out of bed. So anybody who wants to quit coffee, you have to want to try it, do an experiment, and N equals 1 experiment. If you want, you go back on it and drink it again.
There you go.
Right? What do you have to do? So that's where I was in my head. If this doesn't work, I'm going to go back on. Well, all the benefits are so wonderful. I don't want to go back on. I don't. And I honestly don't miss it.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate that.
I miss the smell when people drink it. I'm like, that smells good.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. That was really helpful. And I'd love how you've emphasized so much in our other 2 episodes. Like, it's one thing to learn something, but the point of learning something is to apply it. put it in your life and then make observations. Is this better or is this worse? Is this worth seeing out to the end, or does this not work for me, even though it worked for John or worked for Casey or whatever? Like, so I love that, always knowing that you can go back. I think I'll do another experiment and kind of cut it out and see if I end up missing it as much. So that is very, very helpful. I want to go back also to your method of cooking eggs. You mentioned you cook in a cast iron. You did not mention that you cook in a non-stick type of a pan.
Okay.
Selfish question here, because I love my cast iron pans. I've got two. One of them is milled, so it's been like sanded, super, super smooth. I season them. I put tons of fat in them. I don't know how to get them to not be non-stick. What's your method of having eggs
right.
that don't stick?
All right. Well, if you're buying a brand new cast iron skillet, and I just watched a YouTube video from somebody else, and when it's brand new from the store, you want to put it in the oven and get that thing up to 500 degrees. All right. And then you pull it out and then you season it with your either bacon grease or beef tallow, anything that's a saturated fat. Never use seed oil. Don't use Pam, all right? And now it's officially seasoned. Then when you're cooking with it and you're done cooking, you wipe it out with water. They say never use soap, but that's in the days when lye was in soap. You can use, dishwashing detergent, and if you want to, and scrub it out, dry it with a paper towel, and then like I just did a video on how to season a cast iron skillet. Mine is used, and I just take my bacon fat in a paper towel and I coat it while it's warm. After I've cooked on it, I don't wait till it gets cold. While it's warm, then I store mine in my big oven. I have 3 shelves in my oven, and that's where I store it. Now, someone gave me the tip of using a paint scraper. I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. So as I'm cooking, not while I'm scooping out, I use a different spatula for that, but as I'm cooking, I'm scraping, I'm cutting, I'm moving around with the paint scraper. It never sticks because it doesn't have time to stick. The eggs aren't on there long enough, and they just don't stick. Now, maybe there's a little tiny bit, then you take your paint scraper, and just as easy as you get paint off of a wall that's peeling, it comes right up because it's hot. It's in the moment. You didn't let it sit and burn in. So cast iron, you can cook with cast iron. You get extra iron when you eat food that's cooked in cast iron, especially women who need the iron supplements. This helps boost their iron levels. You can cook in glass cookware. You can cook in stainless steel cookware. You can cook in ceramic cookware, but not a Teflon coating or any other fancy name for a non-stick coating, because the coating eventually wears off. And where does it wear off? It wears off in the food. It comes off in the food, and that's a chemical. We're a chemical factory. We don't want this foreign chemical in our body. As microscopic of a chemical that might come off, you don't want that in your food. That's why I always tell people never use a nonstick. Never. I don't care how new it is. I don't use it. I even take my cast iron, I put it in the suitcase when I'm traveling. I take it with me when I'm at an Airbnb, and I cook on my own.
Yeah, really, really great if you need to make eggs, and really great if you need to smack somebody upside the head or kill a zombie or whatever. Cast iron's great for all of that, multi-purpose. Yeah, exactly. I will say, again, I love my 2 cast iron pans. I'll make a little commercial here from 2 pans that I've used in the past that I really enjoyed. I'm gonna mess up the brand. Califon, is that the brand of pan?
Cathalon is how it's pronounced.
Cathalon. Okay,
Cathalon,
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had purchased their ceramic pan that was infused with olive oil. I want to say I got it for about $50. It worked great with eggs. Like, eggs would just kind of slip out of it. And I would say it lasted for about a year. This is me being very careful with my cookware, always reseasoning things, always, wiping things out and being careful what type of instrument I would use on the surface. It would last for about a year before it was like, okay, this is sticking a little bit more, not really great for eggs anymore. I donate it. The second brand I tried this last year, I haven't had it for a year, so just pretty new to it, is a Hexclad. And this was much more expensive. This was, I want to say I got it on sale for about $150, and it's a 12-inch. And it's I don't know exactly the kind of surface, but it's completely non-stick. They say you can wash it in the dishwasher, which I never do. You can use metal on it. all of those things. I have been very, very happy with it. For the
Good.
number of times that I fry eggs, it's been worth it for me to spend a little bit more on a pan that has a lifetime guarantee. So far has been nonstick. Same kind of thing. I like to keep my eggs moving. The paint scraper is an awesome idea in the cast
Yeah.
iron, but I'm
Yeah,
definitely
it
going to do
is.
that.
Yeah, you gotta try it.
So those are two that I can say like I can vouch for, and I really like cooking with those. So anyway, okay, awesome. Anything else in breakfast that you want people to know? The quality of your eggs, other foods you have, how many eggs
Well,
somebody should have, like any of that?
and that's all taste. Everybody has different tastes. I love eggs, and there are, oh my gosh, I don't know, 80 or 90 ways to make an egg. The folds in the chef's hat is supposed to be all the different ways that the chef knows how to make an egg. I love a runny yolk. To me, it's like the reason I love carnivore. I put that on hamburger meat, I put on a steak, anything with a runny yolk, it's like a sauce. So I love a poached egg. I learned how to poach an egg. I have to make another how-to video because that one got deleted and I don't have a backup of that one. But I learned how to do that in hot water with vinegar, how to poach an egg. The old-fashioned way. They have egg poaching machines and stuff, and you could do it in the pressure cooker. But I love that. And I like my eggs over easy, so I flip them and then I take them off right away. So the yolk is runny, but the white is solid. And I like my eggs, I never eat them alone. I always have them with meat or with salmon. Like I have wild caught sockeye salmon, and I have that almost every day if I don't have shrimp, because I want to get some seafood in most of the week to get my omega-3s. And that egg yolk with a piece of salmon, I mean, who knew, right? It accidentally, got in there and I tasted it. And it's like I discovered this new flavor, egg yolk and salmon. Egg yolk works on anything. It's
So
so
good.
good.
So good.
So the egg yolks are healthier than the egg whites. The egg yolks have everything in it. The egg whites are mostly the protein. The yolks have most of the fat and some protein, and the choline and the omega-3s is just so good. So sometimes I'll break three eggs into a coffee cup, and then I'll take 2 eggs, and over the sink, I get rid of the egg white and just put the yolk, and I add more yolks. And I put it in a coffee cup so that when it's time to cook, I'm not breaking them one at a time on my pan, and then the first one's cooked longer than the fourth one or the fifth. So that way I dump them all at once and they all cook at the same time, flip them. And that's kind of how I do my eggs. Again, just in tons of butter or ghee or even bacon fat, which we save in the refrigerator. When we make bacon, you pour all the grease into a glass jar, never plastic, glass or ceramic jar or stainless steel. I keep it in the refrigerator. Some people keep it on the countertop. And you use that bacon fat to make things taste good. You can use it to cook and add to anything. You can rub it on top of your steak if you want. It's just amazing. So when I talk about foods in all of my videos, Casey, I talk about beef, lamb, pork, poultry, fish, and eggs. It's kind of my motto. I'm wearing Dr. Ken Berry's beef, butter, bacon, and egg shirt for our video today. And then I talk about, what can you cook with for adding extra butter or adding extra fats? It's pasture-raised butter. It's ghee. Ghee is butter. I've even made my own ghee. And I'll tell you how I make ghee. I buy it, but I've made it too. You boil the butter down. You put the butter in a pan, a whole bunch of slabs of butter, and you just let it simmer so the little bubbles are coming up, and the solids from the butter start to separate. And you scoop out the solids as it's boiling down. And it takes about 20 or 30 minutes, and then it's this clear, dark yellow liquid. And what I did is I just removed, with the solids, I removed the dairy sugar, and I removed the 2 dairy proteins, almost 100% of them. And what's left is just the dairy fat. When you buy it in the store, they probably do it better than I do. They get more of it out. And it's so good. It's so delicious. Ghee is my favorite fat. It's the stuff you dip your lobster in if you've ever had lobster. That's ghee. It's just succulent. I buy beef tallow. Now, maybe you can elaborate on this because I'm not real sure about that. Beef lard is any fat that's on the steak that you cut off and you render, and it turns into lard. Okay, that's just beef lard. Beef tallow, I believe, is from a certain part of the beef cattle inside, like near the internal organs. It's a different kind of fat, and that it's more orangey, yellowy in color. So do you know anything about the difference between lard and tallow?
No, I don't. That's a really great question. I should know a little bit more about
Okay.
that. I must be collecting beef lard then. If
Lard,
I like
yeah,
cook
yeah.
a brisket or something and there's a lot of fat, I kind of like
That's
can
the
separate
lard.
it a little bit. That's the lard. Got it.
And it's usually whiter, and the
Yeah.
tallow is orangey yellower. And the word tallow, I found out in Latin, means sebum, or sebum means Latin in tallow. And the sebum is our natural oils in our skin,
Hmm.
right? That's tallow. So, you're putting, if you're eating it, it's animal to animal, it's nourishing you. You can use the fat from chickens. Chicken schmaltz is what it's called. And you render that, it rises to the top in the refrigerator, you scoop that off. It's so delicious. Chicken fat and duck fat, you can buy those as well. And lamb can be very fatty, and the lamb fat, some people have an aversion to it. I love the flavor of lamb fat. It makes things taste very different, and it's delicious. So I cook in those, and then I salt. So let me go over a meal here. So I cut up either beef or lamb or chicken from last night's dinner, sometimes a few strips of bacon. And I don't do as much pork. I don't do as much bacon as everybody else talks about. And that is because bacon, pork, and chicken have a monogastric stomach. And you know this. And when you eat the meat from chicken or pork or turkey or duck, it didn't get a lot of the impurities out. So if the chicken ate grain and it was genetically modified or whatever, you're getting some of that. And the omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid ratio, the omega-6 is actually very high in chicken and pork, unless you can find pasture-raised pork and chickens that were on the pasture eating bugs and worms, then it's better. So I don't eat as much pork and poultry, maybe once or twice a week. Tomorrow night, we're going to have chicken wings, but that's it for the whole week.
Yeah.
So we have lamb loins. We have all the cuts of beef are just amazing. When I went carnivore, I learned with the breakdown of the cow where this meat's coming from. And I'm going to throw a shout out to the bearded butchers. I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're just amazing. They cut up a cow right in front of your face, and they put it on the table in the sequential order, or the geographical location of where the cow was. And they put this tape down so you can say, this is the butt, these are the legs, and it's shaped like a cow, but it's the pieces of meat to show you where they got it from on the cow. I
Wow.
learned so much. They do it with a pig, they do it with a deer, and I bought one of their knives. I'm like, look at these guys cutting with this amazing knife. My knives are not that sharp. So I bought from Bearded Butchers this amazing knife. It's like theirs, and it is sharp. I mean, I'll cut my finger off if I'm not careful. I mean, right through.
Wow.
This sucker. So I love my new knife, and I learned and grew. If I'm not having wild caught sockeye salmon, I'm buying wild caught shrimp. I keep a bag in the freezer. I put it in hot water and thaw it out. I peel it. I cut the top and I pull the vein. They call it the vein. What is it? Their intestinal tract.
Yep.
Run it underwater. I dry it. I fry that in bacon fat. There's nothing finer
Wow.
than shrimp and bacon. And then you
Wow.
add that to your eggs. It's so delicious. So I
Wow.
have that once or twice a week. And it's not that expensive. You buy a bag and it sits in the freezer, and I just do 5 shrimp in one meal, another 5 shrimp in another meal. And that bag is still there. Let's see. And yeah, I use my cast iron skillet for my first meal of the day almost 100% of the time. Then the second meal of the day, which is dinner, that's when we use our Traeger grill. And I could go into that. But another first meal, I put a video on my YouTube channel, is I make a soup, usually more in the winter, bone broth soup. So I make bone broth by just taking all the leftover bones in a big bag. I throw them in the freezer, and when the bag is full, I put all the bones in my crock pot. Okay, there's no effort, no skill, just dump them in. And then I put it over at the sink. I have reverse osmosis under my sink because I want the best water. Fill that crock pot up with water till it covers the bones. I add Redmond Relight electrolyte powder because I want more electrolytes. I take it outside because I don't want to smell the house up with all the odors. I've done it both ways. And I put it on for 12 hours on high. And I forget about it. And one time I did forget about it. I had to throw them out. So and then it's harvesting time. Then I turn it off. I let it cool down. I use a sieve and I pour the bone broth through a sieve, take out all the bones, and I put them in mason jars. I put them in the refrigerator. The next day I scoop off all the lard that came to the top, and I have this amazing bone broth. I make soup with it. So every third day when I have it, I make bone broth soup. And I take the cut up meat from the night before, whether it's beef, lamb, or chicken, or sometimes I'll cook some shrimp. Sometimes I'll throw some ground beef in there. I throw a bunch of butter in there. And then I crack my eggs into the hot bone broth, and the bone broth cooks my eggs. And you could see it solidifying, the yellow and the white. And then I throw all my meat in there, and then I pour it into a bowl, and I salt it, and it's so good. My bone broth, it's just amazing. You put bacon in there. I mean, and time it took 15 minutes. It took 15 minutes to do everything I just said. Now people today want to go through a drive-through. They want to open a box and put in the microwave and push 49 seconds or whatever. This takes time. And go back, think way back, when our grandparents cooked. You put the cast iron skillet on the grill, put the pot on the grill if it's bone broth. You need to cook. Okay, we carnivores, we cook our food. We make our own food. Nothing is processed. And we buy everything that has one ingredient, usually. One ingredient. I'll tell you about another meal that I have. We'll buy bratwursts. And our local grocery store sells bratwurst with the minimal ingredients. Basically, it's pork, it's salt, it's water, and then it says at the very end, natural flavors. And I learned whenever it says natural flavors in a paragraph of dirty ingredients, it's probably a dirty ingredient. It's MSG or it's sugar. But when it says natural flavor and it's at the end and all the ingredients are clean, it's probably clean too. So we love our bratwursts, and I eat bratwursts. Sometimes I'll put some mustard on the plate. There's a non-carnivore thing. Sometimes I don't use mustard, but cook them on the grill. You cut them, they pop with the moisture, and they're so good. And then they're great for leftovers too. You cut up the bratwurst and put them in there. So and my steaks, I like rare. I've learned to like a rare steak because it continues to cook when you take it off of the grill. By the time you let it rest for 5 minutes, which you're supposed to let a steak rest so that the juices don't come pouring out as soon as you cut it. The juices go right back into the steak. You cut against the grain. It's not really rare anymore. It's almost medium rare because it continued to cook. And when I go to restaurants, I always order rare because it always comes out medium rare. And that's how I like it. That's taste. Everybody likes it differently. So picanha, eye of round steak, skirt steak. If you're getting a skirt steak, go for outside skirt steak more than inside skirt steak. That's a different part of the steak on the beef. Outside, it melts in your mouth like filet mignon. It's so tender. Inside skirt steak, you got to chew your butt off. Same flavor, but it's really tough. Flank steaks are from a similar area in there. Just if you want to get into this, people listening, experiment. Go out and buy something you've never bought before. Google how to cook it if you want and try it. Picanha is too thick for me, and I like steak. So I take my really sharp knife, I cut off all the fat, and I render it, and I use it later. And then I cut my picanha, I fillet it with my sharp steak knife so that they're about the same size. And we put them on the grill. Delicious. Delicious flavor in picanha.
So my favorite foods, man.
Tell me some of the stuff that you eat for your first meal.
You're making everyone hungry. So good. So I'll wake up, I'll have my coffee, which I'm pretty sure I'm going to try to go off. I did OMAD for a very, very long time. When I first did carnivore, I was doing one meal a day. I pushed it a little bit too far and was finding over time that I was not getting enough protein. And I could notice like a metabolic kind of slowdown. My hands were getting colder. It was harder to lose fat, that kind of thing. So I knew enough to know I needed to back off of that. So I introduced a mid-morning meal almost exactly the same time as you. So sometime between 10 and noon, usually. It's not set in stone. And as you know, once you switch to carnivore, it's very easy to fast. If you miss a meal, it's not the end of the world. It depends on the day of the week. So I'm still working, and my days are very different. Schedules are always moving around as I'm training my clients. And so I don't know exactly what time I'm going to get to my food. I just know that sometimes I'm going to have to eat it quick. So the thing that I've learned is I take my Instant Pot, which I used to use a lot, and now I only use for this one thing. But even so, it's really good for this one thing. I'll take my Instant Pot. I'll put the kind of cage thing, the trivet, is that how you say it? The cage, I'll put that on the bottom, and then I'll add maybe like half a cup of water and about a half a cup of white vinegar, not enough to submerge past where the tray is, just enough to be there on the bottom. And then I will take 2 dozen eggs. I get the brown eggs from Costco. They cost about $7 for 2 dozen eggs. I'll put all of them into the Instant Pot. I'll seal it. I will set the egg setting to 1 minute, and I will wait until the Instant Pot gets up to pressure. So it's building pressure, building pressure, building pressure. As soon as I see it like pressurize and then flash a 1 that it's about to start its 1 minute timer, I unplug the thing and I release all the pressure. So steam's coming out and everything, and it will release all its pressure within maybe like a minute or so. As soon as I can get the lid open, the eggs I'll take out, and you got to be careful because they're hot, but I'll put them immediately into an ice bath and I'll let them just cool down. Then I'll dry them. And now this is the best method I've ever found for consistently getting soft-boiled eggs that is exactly the way that you are describing. Not everyone is like this. Eggs kind of do whatever eggs want, but it's pretty much consistent where you can have a very set white. If you're really lucky, it'll be a runny yolk. If you're not as lucky, it'll be like semi-set, but very consistently, I'll have that. And so I don't know how many eggs I will want on a particular day, but I always plan somewhere between 6 and 10 or 12.
Do you peel them all and eat them kind of like a semi-hard-boiled egg, or do you cut them in half the way the British do and put it in a little cup and then scoop out of it with a spoon?
That's a great idea. That sounds so classy.
That's the way we used years ago. That's how we all did it. We had egg cups,
Right. Yeah. It sounds really classy. In my typical day, in my work day, I don't know if I have 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's not the prettiest thing. I eat them standing up, by my kitchen sink. I just smack the shell and they kind of disintegrate. And I think the vinegar in the liquid mix helps the peel come off very easily. And I'll just sit there and peel them over the garbage can. And I always have my non-carnivore thing with eggs is green Tabasco. For whatever reason, green Tabasco, just a little bit.
Green.
I know.
I don't think I've had green Tabasco. I've had red Tabasco. I don't.
Life-changing. It's a little bit more mild, but I think it's more flavorful.
From a different pepper. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. And I'll just crack those again over the sink and discard the shell, and I'll have those. And I just let that leptin signal, like you described earlier, tell me when I've had enough. 6 is a minimum. I like to get at least 30 grams of protein in a meal, so I know I'm getting muscle protein synthesis. You need about 30 to 40 grams of protein to be able to get enough leucine to do that. So 6 is the minimum. But if I get to 8 and I'm sick of them, or 10 and I'm sick of them, a food that you should never get sick of, I'm like, okay, that's good for me.
Yeah, that's your body. Yeah.
So I've been doing that, every other day, every third day, for a long time. Bought a lot of eggs from Costco, as you can imagine. During the weekend, I do have a little bit more time. And so the Formula One season is just starting back up, something I've gotten very into. On Saturday, they have the qualifying session, which is usually 1 hour. So I call them my quali eggs. Well, I'll set up my phone. I'll start watching the session. As I do, I'm cracking anywhere from a dozen to 20 eggs in a big bowl. I whisk them around. I take an absurd amount of butter, put it in one of those pots and just melt it and dump in the soft eggs. And I just keep the thing moving, just slowly, just keep moving things around. They become kind of runny, semi-set, scrambled. And I just dump them into a giant pile on a plate. And whether I just eat them as is with a little bit of salt, or put them on, maybe I'll fry up some like Canadian bacon and make like little carnivore tacos or something. Yeah. So those are my methods, I guess, for eggs earlier in the day, and that will typically be my first meal.
Okay. That's different. Everybody does things differently, and it's good to hear everybody's different way. And I've heard other things too from other people. People have, that's what's so cool is you do what works for you, what you love, You don't have to do what anybody else does, and just listening to you, I'm going to try that we have a pressure. I forget what it's called. It's a Ninja. It's one of those
Okay.
Ninja with the lids. The different lids come
Yeah.
off, and one's for pressure, one's for. I'm going to try that with the eggs.
Great. Awesome. Can't wait to hear what you think. That's great. Um, for dinners, kind of same as you. I think we should all be focusing on red meat primarily. I get the meat that tastes the best to me. I contend that the clearance section of the meat section is still local. It's local to us in America. And if I can take meat that is just going to go bad and I can cook it that day and it tastes great, I'm going to do that. If I can get better quality, I'll do that as well. A lot of my meat I do get from Costco. I think they're a really nice resource. Although this last year, I did get a membership to Sam's Club because it was so inexpensive. I have to say, their ground beef is absolutely delicious. They have these
Yes.
little sliders of ground prime rib that are
Ooh.
really,
Ooh.
really good. I've been kind of hooked
Yum.
on those lately.
Yeah.
So those have been great. Traeger, you mentioned Traeger. They're here in the Salt Lake Valley as their headquarters. I
Oh,
have a Traeger.
okay.
Absolutely love my
Yeah.
Traeger. Can't say enough about that, whether you're doing a whole brisket or tri-tips or all kinds of different things. I don't do bacon very often like you. Just I might eat it a few times a month. But if I do, I cook it outside of my Traeger because you talked about like the smells around the house.
Yeah.
I find that to like really help with that. And then I've got something new that I feel pretty confident in talking about. Again, it's new, and so I hope the longevity aspect of this thing continues for a long time. But as you probably well know, if you're on social media and you follow carnivores, you're eventually going to start to see a lot of videos of Dr. Sean Baker
Yeah.
sitting down with a giant wooden cutting board and it looks like a samurai knife. And this huge hunk of beautiful meat, and he sits there and he slices it, and it shows him like watching a movie. I like the ones where he promotes the carnivore people more than I like the ones where he promotes or like kind of makes
Making
fun
of other people. Yeah.
I don't love that part, but anyway, I've watched so many of these videos that like I want to make a steak like that. However he does it, I want to learn exactly how he does it. And so he's made a video showing exactly how he makes his steak. And so he uses a sous vide. So I have one of those already. So that basically it's a water circulator. You fill up a container, could be anything this thing can clamp onto, a pot or a pan or anything that you have. I've got a dedicated kind of water tank for that. I turn my sous vide on to about 120 degrees. You can vacuum seal or manually seal a food in like a Ziploc bag or something, and I will cook a steak, preferably a ribeye, for about 2 hours. No salting or anything like that, just enough to get it kind of cooked medium all the way through. At that point, I take it out of the bag. I try to dry it off as best I can. Classically, when I cook my steaks, I would use cast iron. So cast iron with a lot of butter in it, whatever. The way that Sean Baker does it, he uses an auto grill. And so this is an infrared grill. It's a box that's open on one end that has a shelf that you can adjust the height, and the top gets very, very hot, up to 1,500 degrees. And it sears everything really, really quickly and really, really hot. And so he'll put it in maybe like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And so it starts to develop a crust. Again, you slide this shelf up and down. So you slide it as close as you want to the flame. It does shoot flame. It's gas. And so it does have to be outside. So mine is next to my Traeger. And then once it's done, you pull it out, you flip it, do the other side, and then you can pull the whole thing off and get rid of it. So he uses an auto grill. I believe his model is the Auto Wild. It's $1,000. There's another brand out there. I can't remember right now. I should know it. There's another brand that a lot of people recommend. Sean Baker has one as well. That one's $2,000. So I like to spend money on the way that I prepare my food. I don't mind investing in that kind of thing. I also, when I'm first trying something, I don't like to just dump a bunch of money into something that I don't know whether I'm going to enjoy or not. So I've been playing around on Amazon. I found a brand called Bighorn that makes the same thing, maybe not quite as nice. I'm not sure. It does get up to 1,500 degrees, and it was $150 on Amazon.
Oh, big
I
difference.
decided to check it out. Big difference. Again, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't last as long, whatever. I have been cooking steak on that pretty consistently for 2 weeks, and I have to say it is incredible. It puts the perfect crust on your steak.
Oh, wonderful.
It doesn't overheat the inside, so it comes out that medium rare. Like you said, I'm really enjoying it. I've cooked sausage with it. I've heard fish is really nice in there as it gets like kind of crispy, but also like stays tender on the inside. Mine has like this tool that you use to kind of move the shelves around. There's two different
Right.
shelves. And so if I'm cooking maybe my sliders on the top shelf, or I'm reheating something a little bit lower on the bottom, that's been
Mhm.
really convenient, pretty easy to clean up. I'm really enjoying it. And for $150, I don't mind if maybe it doesn't
Yeah.
last as long and I can give it to somebody else, or get rid of it and get something better. But that's been really fun to use over the last few weeks.
I've been wanting to get one of those, so I'm going to look into the cheaper one.
Check it out. I will put a link to all of the stuff that we're talking about today,
Okay.
but I have to say, so far, I've been really, really happy with that.
Wow.
So,
What we're doing now is I have a torch. And when I take my meat off of the Traeger grill, as you know, it doesn't get the sear because it's not directly on the
yes.
heat. And I just press the button, the torch lights up, and I torch my meat, flip it over, torch it. It's and you can see it's I sear it right in front of my face, and it's amazing. It's a more of a manual way to do that, but I'm always looking for better ways to cook my meat. So
It's like you said, different ways, right? Just
yeah,
different things
different
to
ways,
be able to
better
try.
ways.
Yep.
Absolutely.
You mentioned all of the things that take a little bit of time to make, and they will be less expensive, but that's what you're making the trade-off for. Is it's going to take
Right.
you a little bit more effort and a little bit more time. Will you primarily use your Traeger for those kinds of things, like the picanha and the if you do a tri-tip or that skirt steak you were
We
talking
do,
about?
but I have the propane grill too. Don't even use that anymore. Just
Hmm.
love the Traeger. Keep buying the pellets to put it in there. One of my favorite meals is beef ribs. And I had a video that got deleted. I have to do another one. And some of these I saved on my hard drive, and some of them that were how-tos I didn't save for some reason. I don't know why. And basically, you take beef ribs, and I learned by watching a video how to take off that layer on the back of the ribs. A lot of people don't know that. It's this little fine layer. It's not collagen. It's this little plasticky, I don't know what it is, but it's you can't eat it, can't digest it. It's chewy. And you take it off, and we put it on the grill. We kind of do a dry rub with a bunch of spices, put it on the grill for 3 or 4 hours at real low temperature, 180 degrees. That's the smoking and the wood pellets, and the smoke is just the meat is sucking in that smoke. It's so delicious. Then take it off the grill and put it in butcher paper. Don't use aluminum foil anymore, because aluminum, like plastic, it's not good to get into the food. So I found butcher paper at Home Depot. They sell big, cheap things of butcher paper in the grill section. And we'll wrap it in butcher paper and put a ton of butter on top. Staple it shut, put it on the grill, and raise it to 250 for another 2 hours. And then when you open that up, all that butter stayed in the butcher paper and melted, and then it mixed with the fat from the beef. So you've got this amazing butter mixture with the spices that dripped into it. And I poured that into a glass cup later for dipping, and then later in the refrigerator, it solidifies. It's just heaven. Um,
So
and then I can't explain all this without excited facial expressions, because it's food, and I love food. I love carnivore, right? I love this better than I used to love sugar. So the last hour, you put it back on the grill at 250 without the butcher paper, and then they just fall off the bone. And to me it's like candy. I am eating those ribs, and I like holding a bone and ripping meat off of a bone better than cutting with a fork. And
savage.
I just love it. And then these bones are big, and they go into the baggie in the freezer for future bone broth, right? I have done pork ribs, don't like them as much. I think they're just way too fatty. And in my brain, I know it's not, it's pork, it's not beef. And those bones are little skinny little bones, but I've done those too. So
Yeah.
that's another wonderful meal. Do that maybe once a month. And then, for the holidays, we'll do um, we'll do a prime rib. We spent $80, $100 for a beautiful prime rib, bone in, right? And for the last holiday, for some reason, they were dirt cheap in the store. So we bought four of
It
them.
worked. Yeah.
I have another freezer in the garage where I just buy lots of meat on set, put it in the freezer, and just have prime rib one night. And it's just right on the Traeger grill. I cook a whole chicken on the Traeger grill. You could do so many things on that grill. It's wonderful. And I live in Florida. I go outside. It's never cold, so we
Yeah.
use it all the time. The
That's
Traeger grill.
amazing.
Yeah.
Traeger, again, since they're headquartered here, they're very available. And so it's fun to walk around on like Super Bowl Sunday and walk around the neighborhood and
Oh,
everybody's got their
yeah.
Traegers going. You can smell everybody's delicious food. Yeah,
Here, people
I love,
don't know what it is. They're like, what is that? Tell me about it.
oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to sell anybody around here. Yeah, so I agree with the pork ribs. I'll do them maybe once a quarter and they're very good, but not my favorite as like a primary meal. Again, bacon. You mentioned something on the bone earlier, wings. How are you doing your chicken wings?
All right, chicken wings. Having them tomorrow night. And so they're out on the countertop defrosting. They were frozen. Takes a good day to unfreeze. And you take that little diaper thing out from underneath, that nasty thing. I put them in a giant bowl of water and soak them for a while and dump the water out. I do that like twice. And then I take paper towels and one by one, I dry each chicken wing, the left one and the right one. And I lay them on a big cookie sheet. And then I take ghee or butter and sometimes some bacon fat in a glass dish. I put it in the microwave, I melt it. And then I take a paintbrush and I paint the tops and the bottoms with butter, ghee, bacon mixture. And I flip them over, I do the backs, and then I salt them. And then you put those on the grill, cook them at, I believe, 350, 320. You have to flip them, 20 minutes, flip it over 20 minutes, and they come off and they're so, because of the butter. And this is in the Traeger, no flames touching it. And they crisp up. They have their own crispy and they're delicious. And I just tear into a whole bunch of those. I love, yeah. And then those, you can actually save those bones if you want and throw them in the bone bag for bone broth. I've done chicken bone broth before, but I usually throw those out now because they're so tiny.
Yeah, they are pretty small. Well, that sounds amazing. I know lots of people who do Traeger for wings. We'll use our air fryer for that, and that works quite well as well. But yeah, that sounds amazing. Okay, so let's talk just briefly about when you're eating out. This can be a real challenge.
Okay.
How are you making orders at a restaurant? Again, socially, practically.
I'm going to get my card. It's right over here. I should have had it. Hold on.
Excellent. I think I know exactly what is going to go to, and it would be a card made by a certain Ben Azadi. Was he the one that taught you how to do this?
Say again.
Was it Ben Azadi who taught you about the card?
Where did I get this idea? I had this idea before. I think I just made my own, I'll be honest with you. And then I refined it over the years. And this is my card. I have where it says allergy cards, because they see the word allergy and, bells and whistles go off, lawsuit, anaphylaxis, even though I don't really have an allergy. Hey, it's my money. I'm paying for it. So, and it lists all the seed oils.
So this is like an index card size. It's not very big. It's just enough that,
I made it. I cut it up.
Yeah. Allergies.
Yeah. And I put on the bottom too that I'm allergic to corn, rice, oats, all the grains, even though I'm not, just so they don't put it in there. And then on the right is like all the meats that I can have. And is it in mirror image to you? Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see it. It's perfect. Yeah. If you're listening, I'll try to tag one of these. I'm pretty sure Ben Azadi has one that you can download, but this is very, very helpful. I'll try to tag one so that we can see it.
So, and it lists all the oils I want them to use. And I have to say the word vegetable oil. They don't know the phrase seed oil like we do in our space. Vegetable oil, they know, is the spray from Pam. It's Wesson oil. It's canola oil. They know that phrase. So I tell them, I have an allergy to vegetable oil. Do not wipe it on the grill. Do not wipe it on my steak. Please ask the cook to come out and talk to me if he has any questions. And sometimes they actually walk out and they sit down and they talk to me. And I love it when they do that. And I tell them, and then sometimes they tell me, sir, we can't cook your steak because the grill has it on there and just a little bit's going to get on there, but I can put it in a dish and I could bake it in the oven. So and it's always a steak or a hamburger or whatever, but usually they do it the way I want it. And I'm pretty confident that I'm getting no seed oil on my meats. And then all the other stuff I can find and avoid on the menu. I can avoid all the carbs and the sugars just by what I choose. I order meat. And if it comes with sides or sauces, I tell them no sides, no sauces, put it on the side. And they ask 3 times, you don't want the vegetables?
They're stunned.
I'm going to put the broccoli on the plate, give it to the person you're sitting with. Okay, you can do that, but no, I don't want it. Just a plate. So they come out with just a plate with just the meat and they don't like it. They're like, well, are you sure? Yeah, can't we get you something else? Do you want a muffin? Do you want a bun?
It's mind blowing for them. Yeah,
So
super
the
funny.
rice and beans, don't you want the rice and beans with
Yeah,
this?
exactly.
So that's and so I'm getting really good at being confident about standing up for myself in a restaurant. When I first started this, I was really shy about it. And now I'm like, this is my money and it's my body and my health. And they want my money, my service. They're going to do it the way I tell them it has to be this way. Now, we go on a lot of cruises. I think I mentioned that to you because we live in South Florida. We've got all the ports, and we're going on another one real soon. We're going to fly out of San Juan. We're flying to San Juan, Puerto Rico. And from there, we're taking an 8-day cruise that ends in Miami. And then in Miami, we're going to take the train back up to Boca and then an Uber
Wow.
back to the house. And I know how to order. I go eat, on the cruise ships, you go ahead of time and you say, I need to see tomorrow's menu. These are all the things I want. Please cook them this way. I actually bring a bunch of these and I paper clip it to the menu. They make my meal the way I want ahead of time because they want a good rating.
Yeah.
The ratings that we give them is the money to them more than anything in the world. And then whomever I'm with, if I'm with a group of people, they just order from the menu and I've already ordered.
Yeah.
And I'm eating safe. It's delicious. And I honestly have no problem avoiding all the crap, all the desserts, all the stuff that's all around me. I look at it like the tobacco on the walls in the grocery stores. I don't
Yep.
smoke. I don't vape. It's there. People do it. I just walk right by it. And I am the same way with carbohydrates and sugars. I don't
Yep.
eat that food, period.
Yep.
So many people say it's so hard. How do you resist? You know.
Yeah, I love that my wife did this. We took a trip to South Carolina to visit some of her friends a little over a year ago. She was eating at the time more of a strict carnivore diet. She's relaxed a little bit since then. But as we were explaining what we were going to do on this trip, we're staying with these people. Again, socially, it's kind of awkward. Like, look, we're going to order our food a little bit differently. We're going to take a half hour and go to Costco and just grab a few things that we're going to eat while you're there. Don't worry about us. Like, order what you're going to have and just make whatever food you like. We're just going to do this. And we were starting to get a little bit of pushback. And Bethany, my wife, made such a good point to her friend saying, like, I don't get to see you very often. Why would I come and visit you and feel like crap the whole time? I want to feel good. I want to have good energy. I know that my food really contributes to my good energy. I want to go and enjoy myself. And so to do that, I need to eat in a certain way. And I thought that was a really good and interesting perspective. Yeah, it's fun to take pleasure out of food when you're at a cruise, but it's not that fun to have anxiety or to feel crappy or to need naps. Like, you want to enjoy your life and enjoy those experiences and take time to do that. I think that's wonderful. And the whole ordering thing, I think, is very, very helpful. Once you've figured out where to go and how to make an order, I think that's absolutely critical.
It
I
is.
do lunch with my dad once a month. We found a Mexican joint locally where I can just go and say, I want a pound of carne asada just on the side with nothing else. They bring it to me every time. It's delicious. That is fine for me. We go there every single month. McDonald's. I don't eat at McDonald's. However, in a pinch, when I'm traveling, McDonald's will make you just the quarter-pound burger patties that are
A la carte.
100% guaranteed beef. You just need to know how to make the order, which is you go, you say, I need to make an order from the a la carte menu. Give them a second because it'll take the 15-year-old who just started there a second to find it. And then you just say, I would like however many you want, anywhere 4 or 5, 10, whatever, quarter-pound burger patties, just plain, nothing else. Thank you. And they'll give it to you. And it's always fresh. They're hot. And again, it's not my primary thing, but if I'm traveling in a pinch, those are delicious. They're great. I can get by on those. So
You're right.
I think just building that confidence and making those orders is so important. Before I let you go, I have 2 more kind of questions for you, and then I'll answer the same question. We can kind of just quickly compare notes. But one thing that is underrated in either your equipment or prep or whatever you have in your kitchen.
Underrated?
Underrated. Something you didn't think would make as big of a difference as it does that makes your carnivore lifestyle easy to stick to. It maybe is something we already talked about or maybe something that we haven't.
Boy, I wish I knew the question ahead of time. What makes it easy? Things I didn't have that I now have, I can tell you, but things that I've always had that made it easy. It's just my cast iron skillet,
There
my
you go.
paint scrape, my tools, my
There you
kitchen
go.
tools. And there's a lot of tools that I have that I don't use anymore. I don't use the corn cob holders anymore.
That's
Right?
right.
There's a
No
lot of
use.
little tools that are little vegetable peelers. I don't use them anymore.
Don't need
So
them.
it's just, I cleaned out some drawers, and that's about it. And
Well,
one more thing, I don't know if we have time to talk about it, but dealing with holiday parties and everything, I wanted to talk a little bit about that because there is a lot of social pressure. And what I've learned is you just go to these parties and bring your own food. I make a flank steak. It's cold. I cut the pieces of meat up. I put cheese on the plate. People love it. And that's the only thing I eat unless there's some other meat there to eat. But people love my meat. And then when they're passing around a plate of birthday cake and we're singing happy birthday, take the plate, hold the cake, hold the fork. Everybody's doing the same thing. They're eating and talking and laughing, and you're just standing there. Later, just go put it down somewhere. Nobody's going to
great.
know. That's all. You don't have to feel the pressure like I have to have some because everybody's having it. You don't have to do that. And maybe they'll ask you, maybe they'll say, I've been watching you only eat this food and not eating that food. And there's your opening to actually talk to somebody. So
That's right.
I'm starting to embrace social situations, not as an uncomfortable situation, but as opportunities if they arise. The last one we were at, I brought the flank steak and the cheese. There were only 7 of us. It was somebody's birthday. We sat around a big table, and the comment was, wow, look how healthy all this food is, from the other people. This looks so healthy. That was their comment. And they knew I was keto, so they brought keto food. So they brought cheeses and lunch meats and things. And that's all that was on the table. They were trying to accommodate me. And they made the comment of how healthy everything looked. I said, yeah,
It
it
is.
is.
That's great. I've got a client who I've trained for a long time, but he's now really getting motivated. He's starting to eat a lot more carnivore. It's just very difficult for him because the nature of his work, he is eating out sometimes 2 or 3 times a day.
Yeah.
It just is the nature of it. But he's getting better. And one of the things he will say is like, I've got this restaurant I have to go to. I don't really want to go there, but I have to go there. Would it be a good idea to maybe fill up on eggs before I went? Like, that is a really good strategy that you can try. Why not try that? That's great. I love the holding the cake strategy. I found that when people are doing that, you can even walk around with your phone like you're the photographer and you're taking
Yes.
pictures, and nobody notices. Nobody cares.
Notices. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to say that my most underrated thing in my kitchen has been my vacuum sealer. I don't love that
Oh,
it's in plastic, but the investment, I think I paid $100 years ago. The money I've saved on rescuing meat that's just about to be on the edge, it's on discount. I buy that. Whether it's chuck roast, maybe it's $4. Vacuum seal it, goes in the freezer, it stays good forever. Very, very long time. That has saved me so much money over the years, especially with the sous vide, where I can just take like a frozen ribeye from frozen, throw it in the water bath, go do something else, and 3 or 4 hours later, I've got my steak that's perfectly cooked
you're
internally.
okay with
Just need to seal.
you're okay with the plastic as long as you're putting the meat in there that's frozen or cold, and you're taking it out when it's frozen or cold. That plastic isn't releasing any BPAs because you didn't warm it up.
Yeah,
That's
gotcha.
that's always my question and concern about sous vide. Is that a special kind of plastic that doesn't have those chemicals?
I
don't
wonder
know.
about that. I wonder about that all
I
the
don't
time.
know.
It's
Yeah.
never a high temperature. You're always, sous vide things. Most of my stuff's red meat, so it's like 120, 125. Is that warm enough? I don't know. I just know that's a good trade-off for me, all things considered, but that is a very
Yeah.
good consideration to take in. My
So
last
should I
question
get
for
a vacuum sealer? I don't have
I
one. I never had one.
if you want to save meat internal, in the freezer for a much longer period of time, a
Better than a
vacuum sealer.
baggie that where you push the air out yourself and it's not vacuum, but is this better? Like what is it?
It's just more efficient at doing that. And again, like if you're doing a sous vide, you can cook things in a vacuum sealed bag. You
In
can
it?
also use a Ziploc bag, and if you do, you use your same water tank. You can displace all the water by like holding it down and pushing out all the air until you get to the very, very top where the
Oh,
seal is, and then you seal
yeah.
it. And then at least okay, the water has pushed most of the air out. I didn't get any water in the container, but it helped make it airtight. That could be a poor man's version of vacuum sealer. I
All right.
found the one that I got several years ago, the big major
What's the
brand.
price of those?
Mine I think was a Black Friday sale, so I paid $100. I think it was the $200 model,
Oh,
but
it's nothing.
it's
Yeah.
lasted years, and I use it all the time.
And
So
their special plastic that's in the roll. You have to buy the refills. They're pretty
Yeah, you buy
affordable.
refills. I get them on Amazon. They come really quickly. Yeah, I have used that, and I think that's the most underrated thing, just to be able to save something airtight for a very, very long time
Oh,
until
okay.
something sounds good. So that's been my
Yeah.
most underrated. My last question for you is what advice would you give to somebody about generally speaking about, I don't know, making this practical and applicable to somebody who's just kind of getting started?
To be carnivore,
Yeah, let's say to be carnivore.
to ease into it, to not jump right into it. Because when we jump right into it, our sugar-loving gut bacteria rebel and we have problems on that end. We lose all of our electrolytes because we're flushing them out with the water that we're peeing out. And you have to supplement. If you don't supplement, you'll get the keto flu. Just like I said about the coffee, the way if you wanted to stop coffee, to do it gradually to avoid that horrible headache and everything. So if you're starting carnivore, do it over 30 days slowly. When you get to the end of the 30 days, which really isn't a long time, you're there. And along the way, your body was given time to adjust to the lack of sugar. And your mitochondria starts to change. You start to become a fat burner and not a sugar burner, but that takes time. Doing it all of a sudden, some people say that that's good. I disagree. I think it causes a lot of people to quit and say, I tried it, I can't do it. I've been on this for 4 days and nothing happened. Can't do it.
Yep. Yeah. I look back at the most important habits that I've, changed in my life, and the way that I've changed them to make them stick was that gradual process. Anytime I tried to do something drastic, it's January 1, I have a resolution that will never stick. If I just start to track something and just allow it to kind of slowly go in the right direction, I found that sticks much, much better.
Little changes you don't even notice during the day, a little bit every day. It doesn't even hurt. It's not hard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I were to give somebody starting out advice, I would say, don't let good be the enemy of perfect. Would I love to sit down, fry eggs, watch the sunrise, make artisan coffee? I would love that. That's not the reality of my life. And sometimes, hard-boiled eggs has to be good enough.
Yeah, do what you have to do.
Right. If I'm in a pinch and I wanted to make burgers from ground beef from scratch, but I have frozen burger patties and that's all I have time for, that's all I've got time for. So that would be my one tip for everybody. John, this has been an awesome conversation. I really, really, really hope we've created something that will be very helpful for the listener, not just on the science of things or why things work, but just in the trenches, practical stuff that you and I have learned and gone through. I'm so glad we've got different methods and methodologies of doing these kinds of things. And again, I hope this is really helpful for people out there. Where do you want people to go to find you and connect with you in your work?
Carnivore Teacher 1965. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Instagram. I am on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook. And I'm on X, Twitter. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I want to build it back up again.
Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is really good. I'm really looking forward to all the videos you're going to post there again. I'm sorry you had to go through what you did. Had to go through all the phases of grieving before deciding like, all right, let's just start it back up again. It happens. Yeah, it's a long process to build, kind of followers and kind of build rapport out there, but it's worth it. And it really is impacting a lot of people out there. So thank you as always for all of your content. And thank you so very much for taking the time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
You are welcome. I enjoy this more and more anytime we do an interview.
It's great. This won't be the last time for sure.
Okay.
And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.